Alrighty, everybody. We are streaming. Just testing the volume's working and everything. Hopefully, we have a microphone working. Alrighty, everybody. Yes, we have echo and feedback. That's actually pretty good. Alrighty. Looking good. So this is Dave's head. Now, I've been doing some sculpting, and this is a bit I wanted to, that spurred me on to show you guys the scan. So I'll just quickly go through a bit of a history. This is what I'm working from. Okay, so what you just saw then before was pretty heavily modified already before you got to see it. I'm gonna duplicate that scan. Oops, wrong button. Ah dear. That's going to take a while. Whoopsie daisies. I'm just going to put them side by side so you can sort of see what's been done. And I believe that the one that was just called unedited mesh may actually have had a few quick patches done on it as well, but oh man, why do I always accidentally click things that are going to take forever? Anyway, so we're basically I've patched in a generic head to fill the gaps basically, because it's the easiest way to do it. Now, what actually did I do then? Yeah, so I've patched in a generic head to fill in the gaps, and now I've got to go in and sort of sculpt them to look more like him, as well as mesh them into the original model a bit better. Okay, so I've just made 2 bloody copies of it. I'm just going to stick that side by side for a second with the original mesh. That's what I was trying to do. And because these are big files, it's taking a while to comprehend for my poor old computer, which is actually not that poor and not that old. The graphics card might not be the best, but the rest of the system's pretty good. It's a Ryzen 9 processor. So that's what I had to work with basically. So you can see there's a lot of shit on his eye there, which I've cleaned up a bit, but it's still pretty dodgy. It needs a bit of ball paint hammering to sort of fix that up. So, speaking of which, that's kind of how I've been treating this area, because the shape of the generic head was not the shape of his head. So I have to actually, I've kind of done a joiner strip, and I wish I had have recorded it, I'm sorry, but I didn't. But this might give us a bit of history. You'll sort of see in the colour patches where I've kind of chunked bits in, when it finishes doing its thing, that is. So you can kind of see I've actually filled in these little gaps in chunks between the 2 models, and then since then I've done some what I'm calling ball paint hammering, and it's basically just using a particular sculpt tool. Now I'm just going to delete that head and bring up the original one that I was working on. And before I do anything else, I'm going to save this. Alrighty, so hide that original scan, bring up this, and I'll get back in and actually start showing what I'm doing. So that's the overview of the job. I'm just going to hide this color scheme because it doesn't help when you're trying to sculpt it. Why does it take so long? Because I have a million triangles. So that was a triangle mesh then. And as you can see here, there is some funky sort of stuff going on along that junction, which I might just jump in with the sculpting tool. And just kind of get rid of some of those bigger triangles there. Now this will have a slight smoothing effect, this tool. So it is good to use it kind of sparingly, but we do need to do some smoothing around the junctions anyway, so it's no biggie. Having nice triangles is critical. Now, I mean, there is differences here in the size of the triangles. That's not perfect, but I don't want to go too much into the scan. I want to try and make the dodgy bits that I've made fit the scan more so than the other way around. Now this tool is a bit funny. When you resize it, I don't know what's going on there. There's some kind of little anomaly there which I'm going to pick on. I don't know what the hell that is, but I'm going to get rid of it. Little anomalies like that can do weird stuff. Alright, so back to the sculpt tool. I wish that just size for select and sculpt were independent of each other, because sometimes you really want to get back to the size you were, and I'm not good at remembering what number I was on. Anyway, so we're just going to basically go over and just sort of re-triangulate those areas. There's other ways to do this. You could select the patches and then expand it so that your selection goes into both parts and then do a remesh on that area, but it seems to be a little bit nicer using the sculpt tool. And you can kind of vary the size of your brush, which will vary the size of the triangles, which I actually kind of think is a bit dumb. I wish you could have like triangle size independent from that looks pretty good there. I'm not going to bother doing anything with that. So yeah, it's kind of just a gradual transition between triangle sizes. That's fine because it'll behave fairly predictably. Now the whole back end of the head there is just way too triangulated for my likings. And it's going to make everything run slow. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm just going to pop back into this mode for a sec. Because really it's a bald head. There's not a lot of detail there. That does not need that much detail for that part. Come on. So I'm just going to double click on that big green patch there while we've got it selected. Just to select all of that. It's taking a while to select that patch. So this is the thing with it, having too many triangles. We're really clogging up the system. You need them for smoothness, you need them for good transitions, and you need them for good sculpting. But once the sculpting and the stuff's done, you don't really need them anymore. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to get my selection the hell away from areas that I'm working on. And I'm going to leave his ears fine mesh as well. So I'm just going to select with the control button. Pressed down, I'm going to deselect areas. Why is that taking so long? I know why it's taking so long. It's because I have too many triangles. You look down here, you can see the number of triangles. I don't know at what number my computer starts to run like shit, but at some number there, your computer will run like shit. So you really want to try and keep that number down. So you can kind of work on an area while it's in high resolution and then simplify it afterwards to the point where you can get away with without losing details. Alrighty. That's a huge selection there. That's going to be good though. I'm just going to start at the ear, hold down control and deselect that whole patch. And I'm just using my imagination here to know where the brush is actually going. Again, I'm not being too fussy with this. I just want to just get that selection made. And away from the area that I'm working in, because we want those fine triangles along the area that we are working. But yeah, I really want to just get rid of those triangles because that's just really clogging up my system for nothing. No benefit having the back of the head be made out of triangles so small. When I remeshed that to make it smaller, I didn't mean to go so small, but it did. And because at the time I had walked away and come back and I didn't know how long it took it, I just kind of left it thinking I can get away with it, but obviously it's just clogging me up, so just a few more clicks. Sorry about the wait, everybody. I know this isn't great television. If you're watching this later, not live, in hindsight, I should have I should have just done this before I started streaming, but I didn't. I'm sorry. Alright, I'm not going to do any more than that. That's refined enough for my likings. Now I'm just going to go edit, reduce. And I'm going to turn on the triangles so I can see them. Hopefully this won't take forever. If anyone's watching, just jump in the chat and say good day and let me know as well. Tell me what my audio quality's like, etc. Yeah, so back to the computer that I'm running. It's got a Ryzen 9 processor, which is 12 cores. It's about all I really know about that, other than the fact that it came with a fancy fan as stock and cooler as stock, so I'm assuming it's pretty decent. It's got 64 gig of RAM, which sometimes I use a lot of. Like I use over 32, so I'm glad I got more than that. And I actually got it in the 32 gig sticks, so that I would have me 64 gig of RAM in 2 sticks, and therefore have 2 spare slots on my motherboard for more RAM, because I didn't know if I needed more or not, and I thought get the big sticks, and that way I would have plenty of room for more RAM. I think what's letting me down with this system is the graphics card. It's a GeForce GTX something. I think it's 400, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But I know it's got 4 gig of RAM on it. And I think that it's the graphics card dedicated RAM that is letting me down a bit. Alright, she's recalculating. I think we're good. Hopefully when that bar finishes it's done and doesn't start a new bar. Meshmixer has a frustrating ability to confuse you with all this stuff. Let's have a quick look at that. Press W for the triangles so I can see them. Seems to be taking a while to kick in. So W brings up the wireframe. Okay, we're going to up that percentage. See, it's reduced it, but not anywhere near enough. I just want to just basically, I don't care if that becomes blocky as really, not blocky as, but it was already blocky. I don't know if you could notice that, but even though that's made out of really fine triangles, the original mesh that I brought in had big chunky triangles, so even though this is fine, you can actually run a smooth tool over this now and smooth all those, which is pretty nifty. If you've got a low poly model and you want to smooth it, you can bring it into Meshmixer, make a finer mesh over the top of the mesh, turn it into a finer mesh, and then smooth it. So that's quite cool, and then you can be delicate with your smoothing, so you're not just smoothing the entire thing. You can actually choose where to smooth and where not to, and that sort of stuff. I really can't wait to get in to show you the sculpting, but I just didn't want it to run like a dog, so I'm really sorry. But this is probably good information for you guys. If your computer's running like crap, you want to reduce your triangles down on your, especially if you're doing 3D scans, because the scan itself is fairly high res. Far out. That must have been ridiculously. I'm just going to work with that. I think that's good enough. That's definitely significantly reduced the number of triangles by a long shot. It's a lot less there. Accept. And then once I turn off the wireframe and the color scheme, it should go back to being pretty smooth now on my computer. And hopefully you can't see a big obvious difference here between here and here. And later on when I'm working on the junction here, if I need to, if this looks obvious, I'll just refine that again and re-smooth it. Come on, you dog of a thing. And it's just having a good old think. Let's have a quick look at the resource manager. So it's using some stuff. It's using 29% of the memory of my 64 gig by the looks of it. Yeah, so it's using 9 gig of RAM if I'm reading that correctly. So you definitely wouldn't want to have a computer with less than that. CPU doesn't seem to really utilize all of my cores very well. So it doesn't even seem to hit that hard. I really don't know what it is that screws it up. So you'll probably see one core here is Chockers. I think it's the top one here. It's been, oh no, that's spiked, but it's, oh, that's total, okay. It'll be one of these guys here. But you see, there is some activity on some of them, but there's just, like looking at that, you know, that one's getting hit pretty hard. It does seem to always be CPU 22 that gets hit hard as well. And then there's some other stuff going on there as well. But anyway, I don't know much about that shit, so I'm not much of a person to talk about it. Okay, we'll clear that selection. We're actually going to get down to business and do what we're here to do. So hopefully that was enough time for anyone that was interested to join the stream and not lose interest and go away. It's just having the wireframe showing that's munting this up as well. Like, it really does chew some resources. I'll just turn that wireframe off. And sorry, this will take us just a second as well. I'll just go back to viewing it without the color. To bring this menu up, by the way, you use your space bar. You hold the space bar down to bring up that menu, and then keep it down while you choose what you want to do on that menu, and then let go of it. It's a weird menu system, and it's a bit annoying, but that's what it is. And you can change the color of the backdrop here, and I don't really know what half of that shit does. Alrighty, we can get down to business now. Okay, so sculpting tools. We've currently got that refine brush, which we don't need anymore. I'll show you the robust smooth because I have done some. No, actually, I'm going to go back in and do more hammering. I'm using draw 2. I've got the fall off set to a bullety point like that. You can change the fall off, but I've currently got it set. I might change it to the blunt one actually. And I'm going to resize it because it's way too big. Also, the size of your brush seems to affect how fast your computer runs, especially once you get that triangle count up. Okay, now you can see here there's this big step up where the bubble head, this guy's actually got long hair. The head that I used is bigger in some areas. It just wasn't the same shape. So when I kind of lined it up as good as I could, I've had to hammer this down basically. So I'm treating this like a ball peen hammer. Now if I push that down and click it, it will create a lump. I have to actually press Control to make it not a lump. Okay, so that's going to basically hammer into it. And so what I'm sort of doing is I'm going, right, well, we need to kind of hammer this whole area down. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've kind of got a lot of control over it. And I can always smooth this later, mind you, so don't freak out about. And you kind of get a bit of starting texture, I guess you could call it, by doing this as well. Now, I think I actually probably need to just come along and actually kind of raise that up because that's his eyebrow. I don't want to smash his eyebrow down too much. So yeah, it's kind of a it's a sort of a subtle way, and you can kind of check your depth as well. You can kind of move it around and check the depth of one mark, and go, yeah, righto, that seems to be about the depth I'm going for, and then you can kind of just go around and kind of hammer everything else down to that depth, if that makes sense. So it kind of just gives you a little marker, and if you go too far you can kind of see it straight up. And then so now there's probably a million other ways to do this, and obviously changing the size of this brush is going to affect the impact of it, but because we're dealing around a face, I feel like this is a reasonably appropriate size. What are 023? I might go up a bit. You know, and you can kind of see we're taking away that lump on the side of the head, kind of bulge, ridge thing that was happening. That's the aim. Now I can turn the strength down as well and then wave it around a bit more. Oh shit, I was just pressing that without shift then. It's probably raised it back up. That's alright, didn't do much. So yeah, you can definitely do it in more of a strokey method rather than the spotty method. But, you know, it is what it is. That seems to be what's working for me at the moment. And then once you're done, I might just undo that couple of steps then. Didn't like that. Once you're done and you're happy that there's no major kind of ridge along there, we can now grab either the selection tool and select the region that you've just hammered the crap out of, and then fill it, which can work, but you've got to be careful not to select too big a region. But that seems to have worked pretty well, so I'll just go with that and do that again in another spot. So the fill tool is the F key. So you kind of just select the region, and you've got to be careful with what shape you select. If you select an odd shape, you can end up with issues. So that's looking pretty good. Now, I mean, you could have probably done all of that just using that select and fill method, realistically, but I don't know. So that's just F for fill. So you do have to be very careful, especially when you got like a lumpy region. You kind of want to select, you know, like along that eyebrow there. I want to be careful to select along there. Now the other option is Control F, which is the smooth tool, and that can give you good results as well. You've actually got like a sliding scale of the smoothing effect, and that works pretty well. And of course, there's also if we go into the sculpt tools, there is the robust smooth, which is quite good. So you sort of it kind of pushes and pulls at the same time, whereas your shrink smooth will shrink it, and your what do they call it, bubble smooth will bubble it. The robust will kind of do both. So it's quite good. And look, I actually think that this is probably the ultimate way to do it with the sculpting tool. But you know, it tends to be a little lumpier, but so is real life, and that's kind of, I guess, why I think it works well. You really get to, you know, kind of work with the lines that are there, like those couple of little wrinkles there. If I sort of just carry on from those, you know, and kind of sculpt it in to fit that. Now Dave's ears are a lot different to these ears, and that's what we're going to come to towards the end. We're going to actually come in and try and patch up those ears a bit and make them a little bit more like his. What I might do here, because that bit there just does not look right, is just select that region. I'm just going to chop that selection off there and hit F for fill, and that's done a pretty good job. There is some sliders here. Now the bulge is kind of which direction that bulges in, and then the scale is kind of how much it bulges. So it's a bit weird. I'm still kind of, I don't know, I still kind of basically just have a lash at that and not really sure what I'm doing, so just to be fair. Now I'm going to expand that selection, because this is a good way. See, you can actually see the shape of that edge there. If I expand that selection afterwards and then use the smooth tool, it's generally not as aggressive and it's harder to see those edges. If you saw that then. We'll go back to sculpt. Now I'm trying not to do too much because I don't want to lose too much of this natural texture of the face. So I'm kind of a bit wary of that. But we've got to fix up these eyebrows. Unfortunately, we're going to kind of lose a bit of crowfoot here. Dave probably doesn't actually mind. So there was quite a lot of damage. If you just refer back to this original scan, there was quite a lot of damage around there. It's kind of good being able to see that because I do, if I can see that old scan, I can be careful not to kind of lose anything that we did have. I'm just going to bring the size down and the strength down. This is kind of delicate here. Around the eyes and stuff. So you can see here this little ridge here. Where we had to patch it. You'll probably see in the wireframe there's a, and what we could do there is go sculpt. This will actually have a smoothing effect as well. It's a bit funny, you can kind of actually see it having a smoothing effect whilst kind of bringing the triangle count back to a similar amount. So it's actually quite a good tool, that adaptive reduce. It doesn't quite have the exact same function as smooth. And look, I'm being very fussy about these triangles, but it really does actually make a difference to how the parts manipulate when you're doing other activities. So it's very good if you can do it to have your triangle count kind of quite the same across the board, wherever you're working on areas. So I might just go over here and do that as well. It really does just make it so that it makes it the next level of goodness. And of course, you know, really, it's only important where you're really working. But just that can make a difference when you're doing some other thing, you know. You might be doing a smooth and then there's like this bit where it just won't smooth properly, and you look at the triangles and it's because they're all different to each other. And you know, again, varying the size of that will vary how much it reduces. So that's a bit dumb. It's a bit annoying. But it kind of makes sense a bit. You end up using it in a certain way. Now that eyeball, that pupil is not how I want it to be. But we'll get back into that later. Just for now, I just want to smooth out all of these sort of, we'll go back to the robust smooth. That's actually a little bit small and strong. This bit here is not quite how I want it. I just want to have a look at that original scan for a sec. It does seem to actually go through there. So what I might do is go sculpt. I'm going to choose the shrink smooth. Actually, no. I'm going to choose the draw. And I'm going to hold down control while I do it. And I'm going to turn the strength right down so I don't go too overboard. And really anywhere that I can see that the original model is actually showing through, isn't showing through, I mean. I kind of want to push that back a bit. Just make sure I'm not munting that up. No. Let's bring that strength up a little bit. Let's go back to that bubble smooth. Yeah, it's a real shame the eyebrows didn't turn out. But, you know, we can only work with what we got. Go back to a robust smooth, make it a little bigger. Patch that bit of the nose in there. And unfortunately, I don't have any really detailed photos of around the eyes of Dave, but I do have a couple of pictures of him on my phone, which I'll just use as a reference. Okay, so I need to smooth that part there, that shouldn't be there. That line kind of comes out and down a bit, so I'll just smooth that out. On that side. It does seem to have that bit of a pocket there, that is legit, but I think it's a bit chunky there. I'll just smooth that off. He's smiling differently in the photos that I'm looking at, so something going on there. I'm going to use the flatten tool and shrink this right down. Sort of flatten that back up under there. I know that's being picky, but use the draw tool. That looks more like it. And obviously that little pit in the eyeball shouldn't sort of really be there. So I'm just going to kind of draw that out and clean out that eye groove a little bit. And I'm actually going to put on the fall off to being more like that. So I can actually get a decent kind of a groove. I really just want to put a decent crease in along that bit there. And then we'll pull that little hole out as well, but I just want to define that crease a little bit more. So I'm just going to select the inner part of that crevice there. I'll just roll that selection out a bit so that we're well and truly clear, and then I'm going to come along like that. Just have a little look at this. Okay, this is a situation where we actually need more triangles. So I'm going to go in with the refine tool first. I'm just going to go nuts on that little patch there. Probably along that crease there as well. I'm just going to make my selection a little bigger. Whoops. See that? Okay, that tool's too big. That's pretty good. It did change the shape a little bit just then, but nothing that we can't live with. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to carefully draw along there and then fill that out to there. Not perfect, but good. Then we'll go back into sculpt. And I think we might go back to the robust smooth tool for a bit and just buff that lump out a bit. Because we kind of want this eyeball to be smooth. Nobody wants a lumpy eyeball. And, that's probably part of the reason. We actually want to go back in now to the draw tool. Shrink it back down a bit more, not quite that much. And continue to define that crease. So as I go along with that crease, I'm kind of going back along and smoothing both sides of it afterwards. I reckon that needs to be inflated a little bit. I'm going to actually use the inflate tool for that. It's kind of pointy with that tool method there. Just undo those. Change the fall off back to that blunt one. That's not good. Very, very aggressive. We'll just turn that strength down. Just going to refine that crease along there as well. About to do a pretty heavy smooth on this part of the eye. Okay, things are just jammed up for the time being. Come on, computer, come back to work. I might have just crossed the triangle threshold. There's a weird little spike just there. See that? So I'll just come in and trim around that. Alrighty, I'm pretty happy with that. So now I can pretty confidently make a selection. Which will be the bit that I really want to smooth. We may do this a number of times. I just want to sort of really get that to look. I mean, I could shove a sphere in here as well. That would also work. But I think if I do this right, I think we'll be good. See those bloody triangles there? Cheeky pricks. See what I was talking about? Like you really... I'm going to have to fucking redo that selection. Because those triangles are right where they need not be. That was screwing up my selection that I wanted to make. Make sure we don't have that problem anywhere else. Okay, let's try that again. The other day when I scanned a friend of mine, I actually going to shut his eyes, and in hindsight, I should definitely be doing that more often in future. I'm going to hit B on the keyboard, and that's going to give me a smoother boundary. So it'll kind of cut through triangles and fix it up. And what I'll then do is I'm going to go down with that preserve shape tool and up with the smoothness tool. There's a bit of lag there that could take a second to kick in. There we go. And I'll accept that. And that's going to have smoothed up my boundary. And if I hit F for fill, hopefully it'll give me a nice clean bubble there. A nice bubbly dome. If that doesn't work, I may have to adjust the shape of this edge just here, because that looks a bit lumpy. So that may screw us up. Do 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 do. Okay, that's completely munted. Don't know why it's doing that, but I'm not happy with that. What I will do is I'll just do Control F and do a smooth function on that instead of a fill function, because yeah, that went wacky and munty just then. I wasn't not happy. So up with the smoothing tool and see how that comes up. Sometimes really wacky things happen when you use a smoothing tool. You get these giant spikes and things happen, which it's like, hey, that's not smooth at all. Failing this, I'm going to drag a ball in and then kind of use the eye shape around it to sort of trim the ball off. It works quite well. Yeah, I'm going to cancel that. Okay, Meshmix a sphere in. Now, the trick with this is to get it. It's actually, your eyeball is actually quite large. Pretty happy with that actually. Now what I'll do is duplicate that and move that across to the other eye, which I'll then have to reset the depth. That's actually pretty good. Pretty happy with that. A little bit freaky, but might smooth that one back a touch. I'm going to put that on world view just so it's a bit easier, and I'm going to go by that green triangle, but I'm going to move that down so I can get a better view. Yeah, I don't know, not quite right yet. Yeah, it's a dramatic improvement anyway. We can put some dots on there with some paint. Alright, so we'll leave those as separate objects just for now, so now I can kind of sculpt around them and just do a little bit more touching up on those eyelids. Sort of clean that line up a little bit. Now what we're doing there is probably actually butchering the hell out of that, but it won't matter because we won't see those bits anyway. Just thought I'd mention that. I'm going to go around and do the draw tool first, and I will come back in and smooth it with the smooth tool after. So I just want to clean that line up a little. Might just increase the size of that tool a touch. And decrease the strength so it's a bit slower to respond. Remember, this tool is a push and a pull tool, so you can sort of go both ways with it. Just basically cleaning up the shape of that. of that eyeball. Get that to sort of go right into the crease there in the corner. Pretty happy with that. Maybe one eye looks a bit bigger than the other. There we go. Now, I won't join them on just yet. I'll keep sculpting around. Yeah, so that side definitely creased up more in the smile. The photos I've got of Dave are actually, he's looking very serious, whereas in the scan he's smiling. So I'm going to leave this dimply, creasy business over here because it does look good. And I might even try and replicate that a little bit on this side, just to kind of, although maybe no, he's definitely got a lopsided smile. It's coming out more on one side when I look at the overall face. So I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so that photo's got his glasses on. I'm just looking for a photo with his forehead so I can see whether he's got forehead pipes or not. He doesn't have forehead pipes. He does seem to have two sort of grooves up there and there. But he's looking very serious in this photo, so I'm going to soften them and just do my best. So we'll go back to that draw tool. We'll go with a fairly aggressive fall off. And we're basically going for a couple of sort of grooves up here. Kind of thing. Kind of like that. It makes it look way too serious. It's a bit of an issue. I'm just going to give Dave a buzz. Hey mate, are you watching? Sweet as. Okay, can you see how I'm sort of having a little bit of trouble with the eyebrows? Because in the photos you sent me, you're looking very serious, like I'm taking a selfie and I'm lining my face up. But then in the scan, you were like, "Oh, this is awesome," and you're all relaxed and smiling and stuff. So it's the eyebrows in the photo don't kind of match the expression of the scan, if that makes sense. Sweet as. All right, I'll look for that in my messages. Beautiful. Thanks, mate. Alrighty, that's the advantage of having a live video. So I'll just wait for that to pop through, and while I'm waiting, I guess I can always bungle it up some more. Because yeah, we would definitely want that to match. You don't want that to look strange. What I'll do is I'll do this creasy as, and then I'll come in and smooth it out. That's not quite what the photo shows, but again, I'm kind of guessing what that sort of junction should look like. Now I'll come in with the robust smooth and smooth that back out so it's not as extreme. Yeah, no, it's definitely not right, but it does give it, it needs something there for sure. I'm just going to use the undo controls to take all that out. Okay, so that's back to where we were. I'm just going to save that. Pretty happy with how everything else has gone so far. Now I'll just come back in while waiting for Dave to get that photo through. They sent them by the looks of it. They're just loading up now. I'm just going to come in and just going to smooth that a little bit because that was still a little bit rugged along that side. So we'll get a robust, smooth. Probably go a little bigger. And just kind of smooth out that stuff because that was all very harsh. And look, I haven't really played a lot with depth and laziness with these features, but there is, I believe they kind of affect how, like you might be able to make it so it'll smooth only surface features but won't smooth ridges and stuff. I will play with that in the future, but it's kind of a bit of a trade-off with accuracy and smoothness, and you know. So there's definitely a bit of a lumpy crease here from the join. Let's smooth that out a bit. Coming up pretty well so far, really. I'm pretty happy with that. I'll just bring back that whoops, the unedited mesh. Let's hide the eyeballs. So that's what we're working from. He was wearing a hat and glasses, and in hindsight we should have took the hat and glasses off, but we didn't, so we got what we got. Some missing patches of beard, a few shreds of clothes, so let's hide that again and go back to our current model. So we've definitely got a lot of progress there. My Wi-Fi is probably on. No, it's not on, so it really should be. Here we go. Okay, yep. So there's definitely still that crease, but it's actually a lot straighter and it's more on one side. Alright, so that's smoothed. We'll go back in and I'll save it again. Back to that creasy pointy. I really should get into figuring out how to save these brush configurations. I'm sure there is a way. It's going to turn the strength right up so it's quite aggressive. It doesn't come right from where I thought it did, it sort of comes from there. And a slightly smaller one on that side. And then this kind of needs to be lifted up a little bit, bulged up a bit. I'll smooth that out afterwards, but that kind of... Actually, I'll just do that with a bigger brush. And a smaller fall off, smoother fall off. No, stuff that. It's got to make that not as strong, not as aggressive. Probably go a bit smaller, not so small. Sort of want to lift that there because there's a bit of meat there when he's got that sort of wrinkle thing happening. And another bit on that side of it as well. Fade that out. Again, with the ball peen hammering, it is kind of just an easier way to build up a shape kind of more accurately to the geometry of the face. And there's a lot of flattened, smoothed area here as well, which is kind of a little bit of a bummer to have that kind of right close there like that. So I'm just going to jack that up a little bit there too. Kind of looks like it's covered in warts at the moment, but that'll all go when we smooth it. Sorry, Dave. Give me your warts. Yeah, I reckon that's pretty good. Alright, out with the robust smooth. Touch bigger. Might actually go bubble smooth. Well, hang on, why have we got refine? Well, that's why it wasn't doing much. So I'm sort of trying to smooth it in sections that make sense to the geometry, and then give it a quick wave over everything at the end just to sort of really polish it off. That's pretty good. I feel like I need to inflate this area just here. Go back to that draw tool, crank it up a little bit, bring down the strength. It's kind of like there's this... David, if you could try and get me kind of a view of that there might be one in the other photos, but I'll just let me see. Yeah, the sun. Yeah, your side profile view that I have, you've got sunnies on. So if you could get us another side profile, I'll text that as well. Yeah, we really need to sort of, I just want to get that shape there and know whether how much to puff that out, because where I joined the forehead onto that, it looks like it's kind of scooped out a bit too much there. I'll just undo those last couple of edits just in case it is like that, and I'll move on to another area where we do that. Let's bring them eyes back. I like them eyes. And I'm going to just have a bit of a tweak of the ears. Now I reckon that's a better ear on the model than that ear, so I'm going to actually do this one and then mirror it. Let's go to those ears that I've got photos of. Righto, so yeah, there really is a big, you called him a mud flap. The old mud flappy is. So I've got the right tool for the job. It's down very weak though, I'll just crank that up. Build up that mud flap at the back there a little bit. And I will just join it onto the back of the head just for the sake of printing a bit. That's too much obviously, but I'll smooth that down in a sec. Just hammering that ear out there. Strength. Might go for the bubble smooth actually. Puff it up a bit while it smooths it. I don't think we have this chunk here missing. That actually needs to be puffed up. Oh. Sorry, I'm not talking much, I'm just concentrating. So I'm basically I'm looking back and forth from the photos to the ear, to the photo to the ear. I'm just trying to sort of hollow that out a bit where it should be and get some crevices in there where they need to be. It's a bit dark in there in that little spot. I'll come back over this all again in a second and smooth it. Sorry you guys can't see the photo. A bit slack, aren't I? Alright, back to our robust smooth, and we'll make them a little bit bigger. Smooth that all up. Switch to bubble smooth, I think, for along that ridge. Yeah, it's pretty close. I need to trim a little bit off this bit. Not too much. Just that little bit had to come off. I think we need to just deepen this little groove here a little bit as well. That's coming along pretty well, and I'm just going to refine around that ear as well, because that's all very blocky. Get rid of those triangular shapes. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. It's not 100% Dave's ear, but I think on the whole, that's pretty Dave ear-ish. And Dave does also have long black hair, and that will probably, when we get the wig for it, so we're going to do a wig, we're going to do a bald Dave with a wig instead of trying to sculpt the hair. Yeah, I just want to deepen this little groove a little bit. Probably go for the pointier fall off. And it's a little big. Turn its strength down just a touch. It's amazing how unique ears are. Not just Dave's ears, but every ear. Very unique. Bits of gear, the old ears. That crack there is very sharp. To the point where I think we actually need to get right in there and inflate bits on either side of it. Back to the robust smooth with a blunter finish and a smaller size. Too much. Lower that strength down. So we want to sort of smooth that, but without smoothing the crease. We want that crease to still be nice and sharp. if we can kind of just get that ridge there. A little bit bulgier down the bottom. Alrighty, now I can see a bit of a difference here between this spotty texture and the smoother section. At the moment I'm going to skip over that. I just want to go over and just make sure I've got all the basic shapes right, and we'll swap that ear onto the other side. So I'm going to steal that ear. I'm going to do a little trick now. Separate that. I'm going to go to this and go edit, separate shells. I'm going to grab that and combine them and close the cracks. So that's only going to close this crack because it's the only bit that's got joins. Then I'm going to duplicate that whole ear part and then select that again and combine it again. So I've now selected the new ear and the main body, and I'm combining them. And what that's going to do is I'll have to close the crack around there. And once that's done, I'll have a spare copy of an ear. It's just closing the cracks. It's taking a second to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to hide that main head for 1 second. That's my spare copy of the ear, which I now have to go edit, mirror. And I need to flip the mirror plane around to a useful plane. No, I think I want a 90. Yep. I'm just going to slap that over there too. I'm going to put it too far away. I'll get it a bit closer. But I'll put it off to the side for a second. Accept. Okay, so now I've got to separate shells so that that is detached from the old ear, which I'm going to delete. So we don't need that ear, so that side is back to normal and we now have a spare ear. Now, it'd be nice if that kind of lines up fairly well with the original ear and doesn't require too much fidgeting, but I get a feeling we will have to stuff around with it. So I'm just going to cancel that. Before I do anything, I'm going to hide it, and I'm just going to get rid of this entire ear. And associated eeriness areas. Let's put that back into visibility for a second and just try and, what I'll do is I'll actually just try and make a patch that's just got a bit of a gap around it. So I'll actually just remove a little bit more of, just using this as a bit of a visual guide. And I'm just going to remove that. I'm not going to delete it, because if I delete it, it's gone. If I remove it, separate it rather, and hide it, then it's as good as gone for now, but you know, it's not actually gone. Don't know what that bit there is. Alrighty, now we can get that bit in, and it needed a little rotate. That's pretty good. Pretty happy with how that looks from there. So now I'm going to go you and you. Actually, let me try something. Yes, my shift button on my mouse works. That's awesome. I've got a mouse button with hotkeys. Oh, hang on, before I do anything, just going to trim a little more off there. Cool, some new pictures to come through from Dave. Alrighty, that should get me out of trouble. Now there's a little bit here where the jaw's a little bit different, but I think we can make that work. I'm going to combine them now. So that's going to become one part, even though there's a gap. Okay, so then what we'll do is we're going to select some bits. I'll try not to make my brush too big. Bits that face opposite each other, and I'm going to use the bridge button, which on my mouse I have. It's actually a hotkey I've got on my mouse, but it's the Control B for bridge if you're using a keyboard. And I'm just going to work my way around and make some little bridges like that all the way around. This might seem like an odd way to do this, but it seems to work pretty well for me. Because then you can go in and use a different tool to fill in the gaps. And this way you kind of get, like, you can choose where things happen at. So it sometimes matters where something happens. Oops. So if you just try to fill that all in one go with the fill command, sometimes it'll just do weird lumpy stuff. Alright, I reckon that's probably good enough. So now I'm going to go Analysis, Inspector, and then that will hopefully have a bunch of bits outlined in blue. Perfect. Which I should be able to fill now. If I tried to fill that in one go before, it would have done weird stuff. It's going to hit Auto Repair All because they're all straightforward and it's the only 4 repairs on the job. I don't normally use Auto Repair All unless there's a lot of little mistakes that I can see that are all going to fix well. Anyway, so that's that. Now, as you can see, we've got this big weird bit around the ears where it doesn't all kind of line up very well. Okay, so what I'm going to do there is increase the size of this, and I'm going to just select. Now, what I'm doing, right, I'm assuming that the ear bit is kind of more so the right bit, even though, I mean, they're both kind of right, they're both kind of wrong. Really, the scan's the only bit that's right, and it finishes way over here. So the rest of it's kind of all patchy as anyway. So I'm going to go deep into the head portion and only shallow into the ear portion on this part here. There's plenty of room for that head to give way. And I'm going to try and trim it off fairly close to where that little bit plateaus off. Then I'm going to hit F for fill. Now that's going to kind of just smooth that whole area over. Kind of average it all out. And I'm just going to do strips of that, basically. Go deep into the head, overlap the last one a little bit. And fill. And reselect. So you'll see it's kind of making these chunks. There is a little bit of a groovy, liney thing going on there, but that doesn't worry me too much. That patch there looks like I can get away doing that in one go. So you know, you're sort of just taking a nice little swathe out of the previous one, so that it can kind of integrate with the previous chunk. That looks pretty good. And it's just going to do a nice job of averaging everything out. And then we can go around with the smooth tool as well. There's other ways to do this. Oh, fuck that. See, that there was just weird. I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to go Control F instead. I don't know why it's done that, but it has. So Control F will be a smooth, and then if I do that enough, yeah, it's giving me a good effect there. Sometimes you get weird things going with some tools. It's just weird. So that's kind of a good way to do those bigger chunks. I think I'm going to switch to the sculpt tool though and go for the hammering method and just kind of hammer this bit here down on the ear, because I think that section there, I'm pretty happy with that jawline, so I want to hammer that ear back down into the jawline. So I'm going to hold Control down with my draw tool and I'm just going to bash that down. If you can hear my mouse clicking, it's because I'm kind of... You can just turn the strength right down and sweep like that, but it just doesn't give you the... when you ding it in, you can kind of see how much you've dinged it by, if that makes sense. So if you can see the dent, you've got more of a visual cue as to how much you're pushing it down. In real life, you can see the surface better than you can in this. So you can kind of, you know, the light plays off it better in real life, and you don't need to kind of make obvious dents in something to see how far it's moved. But with this, just kind of helps to kind of give it that ball pained look as you go, and then smooth it out afterwards. Just my opinion. Sort of stops you from going too far with things, I think. Other people may have different techniques. This is just what works for me. And it's only something fairly recent that I picked up, which is why I thought it was worth... I got excited about it and thought I should talk about it a bit. Because previously I have just tried doing the smoothie, and you know, it just hasn't always worked the best for me. So I just thought I'd just go in and do something different and show you guys. I can actually bulge that up along there and then knock that back along there. Alright, that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy now with that. I think I might just bash that down a little bit along there. Alright, now for the robust smooth. Let's make that a touch bigger. And stronger. Seems to sort of help if you kind of buff in the edges of your smooth as well. Get a bit of a circular motion going or whatever. There is a little bit of lag going on for me at the moment. Just going to increase the size for that chunk there. Try not to hit the ear itself while I've got it so big. Let's give those triangles a bit of a quick buff. Probably doesn't hurt to just come under and give that a little smooth over as well under the neck there. Some weird stuff going on there that needs a bit of proper attention, but we'll get to that. Just doesn't hurt to give it a quick once over. Now I better check those photos from Dave. I reckon he's probably sent us the bridge of the nose. So I'm pretty happy with that ear. There's a little bit of work to do just joining that on a little bit smoother, but we'll get to that. Oh yes, nice, some more pictures of the ears. Excellent. Okay, that's a perler there. And actually, that nose isn't too bad where that joins in. That's actually pretty close. I think I may have overdone that little bulge there, or if anything, actually it's not that I've overdone the bulge, it's that I haven't tapered it off in far enough. It actually has to kind of travel further up. Probably a bit extreme with that big brush. I think I'll just shrink that brush down. Gonna bring those up a little bit higher. It's kind of just a little bit sharp. looking pretty good. Yeah, that way that travels down there, that's pretty accurate, I reckon, looking at that photo. I'm pretty happy with the eyes. That nostril needs a little bit of attention. Little bit of a sharpen. That one kind of filled in a little bit funny when it filled itself in from the scan. Pretty good. I'll just go back in with the smooth tool, give it a little bit of a smooth. I hope I'm not taking away wrinkles that are meant to be there, but I just wanted to sort of clean that up a little bit. It's a little bit blocky there still. And I'm just going to do a bit of a, I'm going to do a large area smooth on that patch there. Just not quite happy with how that was. So Control F for smooth. Crank that up. Yeah, that's better. I'll do the same thing just here. So once the shape's already kind of close to what you want, doing that smooth tool kind of works pretty well. But if it's nowhere near what you want, then it can be pretty disastrous. You'll see that'll kind of just smooth that out without losing the shape too much that we're after. And I think I might just do like a smooth along this jawline area here as well. It doesn't have a very sharp jawline. Alrighty. Now looking at it, I don't think he's as blotchy as the scan is here, so I'm actually going to probably go through with the smooth tool now. I'm going to turn the strength down a bit. So I might leave the strength up. Let's just try turning the depth down. And we'll go with the big size and see what happens. So it seems to be taking off the stuff I want to. And it doesn't appear to be damaging the bits that I don't want it to, so that's good. Yeah, that's good. It's keeping his deeper shapes without it's actually quite good. Just giving smoother skin. Without losing the smile lines and the details. So that's good. Oh, that depth tool is handy. That's very good. The depth slider. Well, I'm quite happy with that. Let's turn the strength up for these little triangles. Just want to get them away from the face. Probably turn the size up as well for them, really. So I might just jump in. Oh, it's already doing it. Good. Let's say jump in and start reducing the triangles a bit, but the smooth tool is already playing with the triangles on its own accord, so that's good. We'll just give that a smooth over. It should give it a nice reduce for me as it goes. Which will of course improve our speeds. Turn off that wireframe for a second and see if it's actually, yeah, that is. You can see the smoothing effect it's having. Cool. Come on. So yeah, that's gotten rid of that low poly effect from that model. And that's looking good. The beard's pretty good. I'll just bring up a photo again with the beard. I may bush it up a little bit. Oh, he's shaved. He's shaved since. I don't know whether to go with the shaved or with the beard now. I think I'll keep the beard. It's going to be probably more trouble than it's worth trying to get rid of the beard and the moustache. So I think we'll keep it. But I will just smooth under that neck just a little bit. Because is where you can't see a detail, it's better not to have a detail. The printer's got to try and print it either way. Now what I might do here is actually make a selection and just give him a little bit more neck. I'm just going to go around and select around the edge of the neck. I'm just going to kind of stretch that down a little bit like that. And do a plain cut. So I've got a flat spot on the bottom of it. Let's get rid of that. Selection. Edit. Actually, I'm going to do the smoothing first. Let's just get that sorted out. So I'm just going to bring up the face group so it's easier to select that chunk there, and then I'm going to roll that selection out in every direction. Then I'll make sure that it hasn't gone into any detail areas. Nope, hasn't gone anywhere that's going to get ruined. Might just actually increase that chunk up there. And I'll just grab that whole bottom panel there as well. I think I can double click on that. Yep. Kind of makes that the shape kind of roughly kind of dodges that ear and that. Okay, now Control F. We should be able to smooth that nicely. That looks like it's going to work well. And when I drop that back down, it's just going to give us a slightly better kind of a neck vibe. Cool, more pics coming through. Yeah, they're good details that you're sending through there, Dave. Keep them coming, mate, and I can whiz over everything and have a good look at it once they're all through. Let's hide this. Bit of a weird lump there on your neck. Let's select that region and use the fill tool. That looks a bit more natural. I'll just increase that area there a bit around that. And use Control F to fill, to smooth that rather. That looks pretty good. I reckon we're looking pretty good. Neck is a little bit crooked, but we're going to chop that off anyway. We'll get him to sort of sit flat on the table, looking slightly upwards. In theory, that will mean that he will be kind of looking like that. And of course we could change that angle if we need to, but I think that looks pretty good. Slightly, I'm just looking at how it's going to print. It is good if that's kind of tilted slightly upwards. I mean, ultimately we could print him like that, and then that would mean that his nose wouldn't need any support, but I'm pretty confident we can just clean up under the nose pretty well. So we'll go with that. Okay, so it's giving it a nice bottom of the neck. That's pretty good. I've lost a little bit too much detail here, I think. Just looking at those photos. And go back into the Draw 2 tool. I think that's a bit too banged up there, so I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit as well. That's better. Popped out those couple of little creases that aren't really there. Scan's funny like that, it can really sort of bring out these creases that don't exist. Oh, a bit extreme. Turn that strength down. I reckon that's bloody good. A little bit of a lumpy ridge down there, so I'll make a selection. Make it a fairly big selection. Just going to go down there. Roll that out. Give that a bit of a smooth. That's got that. Patch of triangle-y bits there. Let's get rid of them too. Now, Dave, if there's anything else that you think I've missed, let me know. Let's just go back into that robust, smooth. Turn its strength down. Looking good. There's possibly some details in these regions here that I'm not getting that should be there, but without without the scan getting those sides, it is quite difficult to kind of imagine what's there. And from the photos, it doesn't actually, from the photos, it doesn't really look like I have missed much. I think that's kind of pretty much a general transition from face to ear there, really, and there's nothing that I've really missed. These do look a little bit banged up inside still. I might just give them a bit more of a polish. Why is that not showing that when I'm there? I think it's that shader. Ah, it's because I haven't got that tool selected, that object selected, that's why. So by smoothing these ears individually a bit, it's going to give them a bit of uniqueness as well. They won't be both identical mirrors of each other. Probably a good thing, if they're not. Yeah, it's a little bit harsh in there. Just smooth off. Just these underside points of the beard. I know it is losing a little bit of kind of detail on them, but when it goes to print, they'll all need to be individually supported. So if it doesn't have any kind of little spikes at the bottom of those, it's to our advantage. Just sort of going over on the bottoms of those little points and just giving them a little bit of a A little bit of a touch. And we can actually just build them up a little bit, but as a little line. The strength on that and the depth is fine. There's just a few smooth bits under here that kind of don't quite look beady enough, so I'll just give them a bit of texture. So sort of sharpen up some of those details a little bit. To define those a little bit more, so there's a bit more obvious hair strands. Not that they're individual strands, but you know, it kind of gives more of a hairy vibe. Alrighty, well, I am a happy camper. I've saved it, it's good. Now what I think I need to do now, do I play with pupils or do I do that with paint? It's such a tricky decision. So if I do this, it can look good, but it can also be a nightmare. To try and get them both the same. You'll see what I mean, like it often ends up looking all cross-eyed and weird and wacky. That's actually pretty good. So now there will actually be a slight little bulge of the pupil, which I think is probably important, really. Just keep in mind that is a 3D pupil bulge there now, but there is no no colour. And what I'm going to do actually. Just going to make those. Whoa. Try and just get them to be one solid piece. I could have done a Boolean union on them, but normally the make solid's pretty good. That looks good to me. Okay, I'm going to save this before I join the eyes on. How long have we been going for with this? $7.54, 89. So what a Boolean union is, it's actually joining these eyes in to be part of the mesh with no internal geometry anymore. Whereas before there was a full sphere inside there and everything, and now what we're doing is actually getting rid of that and just making it one single mesh that's got it's like one sphere that's been pushed into the shape of Dave's face, instead of it having three spheres, one that's the face and then one that's each eye. It's now that's actually joined. So this crease, even though it looks like it's got a nice sharp crease there and everything, it is actually one piece now with the rest. If we look for an inside his head, hang on. If I can get to the right angle to get in there. Alright, so we're looking at inside Dave's head now, and you can see that's actually the inside of his eyes and stuff there. Oh, we may have one weird bit of internal geometry there. Allow back faces and select that bit there. I get a feeling that that is a strange floater. It's going to roll that selection out. Make sure from the outside that we haven't got anything selected. Yeah, we don't. I'm just going to keep going with that selection. Let's separate it. See what we're looking at there. What the hell is that? I don't think we need it. Don't think it's going to be a problem. There's probably a little tiny hole somewhere in here from where we took that out. No. Okay. Yeah, those eyes look pretty good. I don't think he looks cross-eyed. Does anyone think he looks cross-eyed? Ah, good. There's a good picture of the beard. Thanks, Dave. Probably fluff this bit here up a little bit. Need a little bit of hair there as well. It shouldn't be bald there. That must have been a hole patched or something there. It's good to define where the beard ends and the face begins. It's very difficult blending in your own sculpted hair with the hair that's already there. It's a weird thing. I did it with my friend Tim's hair the other night, and it was quite a challenge to get that how I wanted it. Just smooth that little tiny patch just there. Yeah, it's meant to be skin. A little patch of skin there and there. Rightio. Actually, I'll just whack that skin shader back on. I like that. There we go, Dave. Just let me know via text, mate, if there's anything else that you want me to do on that. Otherwise, I'm going to call that good. I think that's ready to stick on the printer. Now let me just see if I open up my slicer software. What was the print there? A dice. I need to open up a new instance of that. Oh, you guys can't see that anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's interesting, I don't have a Cura. Oh, I haven't exported it yet. No wonder. Helps if I export it first. Why won't you fit? Why is your head too big, Dave? Gotcha on there. I'm not doing it in TPU, we're doing it in PLA. So we've got options with quality and whatnot, but this is going to be the attempt at matching the one that you saw at the festival day. Okay, so whoa, she's 2 kilos. There's something up with that. That's too heavy. Let's have a look at the preview. Shouldn't be 2 kilos. I think we've got too much infill. Yep, way too much infill. You don't need that much. No one's going to be kicking your head around the paddock. Yeah, I reckon we can probably go 10%. Zigzag. Probably 2 walls. Let's try that. Should get us a bit less plastic, a bit less time. Sorry everybody, I'm back. I just had to go and do a few things. Alrighty. Now, so I still reckon we've got more infill than we need there. I'd like to try and get it under 1 kilo if I can. That's a lot of infill. Yeah, there's just something about keeping your prints under 1 kilo. That means you don't have to get a second roll of plastic and hope that the colour matches it. Because it's pretty rare for the colour to be bang on between 2 rolls. It seems like every time I do a filament swap, you can pick the line. Not always, but with the wood fill, which I'm planning on using for this, you can definitely see it when you change colour. The wood fill's great for I don't know if we're going to get under 1 kilo. And we need more support too. Needed support between his nose and his moustache. What I might do to shave a little bit of weight off is actually just drop it down a little bit further into the build plate and tilt it back a tad more as well. So yeah, I really hope we can get under 1 kilo, because I don't want to have it get most of the way through printing and then change colour on us, because that's a bastard. And the effect of the wood filament as a skin tone is brilliant, because you can then put a darker colour on and then kind of mush it together, mush it all into all the, so I don't know what I'm talking about. You get the dark colour, you get it into all the crevices, and then you can hit it with some sandpaper and actually take off the highlights and clean it back off again, and you get a really good effect. That infill's still quite dense. Do 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 do. Oh, we're close. We're very close to our target of under 1 kilo. So I think if we just shuffle the model down a little bit, we'll be good. So you don't need that much infill, but look, I might do the gradual infill steps. It's risky, the gradual infill steps. I'm actually just going to make it so that the step height is like 4 millimeters. Gradual infill steps can cause layer shifts. It's a weird one. It can cause the printer, like, it's trying to save material and everything, and that's all well and good. But on sloped surfaces, it can cause an effect where the sloped surface will curl up on you. The infill from that sloped surface will curve upwards and get caught on the nozzle. So I'm a bit iffy about using it, but in this scenario, I think it will pay off. What's it doing? It's putting them in wacky spots. It's just putting in lines in just random places. Having said that, it has reduced my infill down a lot. See these bits here? These bits can curl up on you. They're pricks. And why why it's going straight through in some places, I don't know. Maybe it just uses less material to do that. I don't know. It doesn't look like they're going to cause any harm in there. I just don't know why it does those strings in the middle of nowhere. Maybe it's a connect infill lines option, I don't know. Which isn't really an option on Zigzag anyway. I don't know. I don't know whether I like it. There is other ways. Boo. Let's just try this. We might be able to make it so there's no infill inside him. Just like a patch where it just runs out and stops. It's getting pretty tricky, but it's a lot better if any ugly bits are right deep inside it where you can't see them than if they're on the surface near the edges and stuff. That should hopefully just make that void that I've marked out with his head completely hollow, and hopefully not add any walls to it. If it adds walls to it, then it's going to end up using more plastic. Nah, let's put a wall on it. See that? Wall line count 0. We'll try that. So yeah, ideally if we can just have it so there's infill around the edges where it needs it and then not where it doesn't, that'd be great. Okay, we've saved infill, that's a good sign. Let's have a look at what it's going to look like. Excellent. That is exactly what I wanted to see happen. We've gone under a kilo. It's only going to take 2 days to print. We haven't had to resize it at all. Nothing looks like it's going to go to shit in here. And I'm pretty happy with that. It's got plenty of infill to provide strength. We can probably even actually go back up to our 10%. No, we won't go to 20, we'll go 10% infill. 10% infill is a nice amount. And we can probably make that internal one a bit larger as well. Let's go with, say, 80%. The main thing is there's enough meat at the top to close over at the top of the head.
that's really that, and a few other places that need some internal support are the only bits that really need infill for the sake of printing. Infill's good for the sake of strength as well, but there's do you need it for the outside shell to look right and not have big holes in it where everything's collapsed in on itself and doesn't print properly, or do you need it because you want your part to be strong? There's two kind of reasons for wanting infill. So, okay, we've brought our weight back up. We're just under 1 kilo still. And we've brought our time up. But we'll definitely get a better result. And there is tons of meat around, and I reckon I can possibly... I just want to actually do a scroll through in case there's areas with less meat. Make sure that there's no bits where it goes really thin on us. So what goes on there? It's a bit suspicious. How close to the edge that goes there. But it never interfered with the outside. I'm just going to turn off helpless for a second so I can see it without the support. I don't think it touches in here, but we do lose. It'd be nice if we could cut off those ears on that internal one. No, I don't think that's going to hurt anything, no. But I might just go back to the 75. Because, yeah, it is a bit close. Yeah, a little bit close for comfort. Also, it looks like I could actually do to move it across a little bit. Probably didn't line it up that well when I lined it up. Maybe I'd also stretch it vertically and lower it a little bit, but... just over the 1,000 grams. But yeah, that infill's a lot denser than it needs to be. Let's go back in there and just whack that back down again. We'll go to, let's try 8. There's no way I would try and combine this with the gradual infill. It'd just be a nightmare, I reckon. Now, a lot of people might be thinking, why don't I just hollow it out? And the reason is because if I hollow it out, it will have an internal wall that's as thick as the external wall, because it's all still technically the outside of the model, even if it's a complete void inside the model. And that would mean problems. Alright, 904 grams. There's 100 grams to spare. Don't know why it's got tops and bottoms on the inside to there, when I've pretty sure that in the per model settings it was turned off. It's turned to 0. That's a bit strange. I'm not going to be too picky about it though. Actually, I think I know what it could be. Try that again. Might save us some more plastic that we can use somewhere else. Aim is to get it as close as possible to the kilo without using the full kilo. Now I'm just going to read my packet and make sure that it's a fucking kilo roll. Where are we? Wood filament, where are you? Where are you, my wood? So I'm going to be using some Monocure brand wood filament. Oh, crap, there goes the roller in the back of the shelf. Not the one I'm using, thankfully. Ooh, it's a 0.8 kilo roll, you bastards! Oh, it's only 800 grams. Motherfuckers. Getting this down to below 800 grams is not going to be a good one. Oh, I'm not far off it though. Ooh, yeah. Group the models together so we've got one model. I reckon that might just get us below 800 grams. We haven't lost much. I don't think we've lost anything important. That's a bastard. Yeah, I just thought I better check the roll and make sure it's actually a kilo. Net weight 8.8 grams. 0.8 kilos. That would have really fucked me up. It would have got to the top and then just ran out of filament. 842. No. I don't like that. Slice off a few more kgs. I mean, the other option is just ordering some filament from someone else that actually sells it in 1 kilo rolls, but do, 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 do. 806. And pretty bloody close. Let's just have a look at the preview of that and see how far through the bottom of it we've chopped. Would have gone back to the 8% infill. Let's have to just, oh, I know. Let's have a look at that and see if we can put a few support blockers in. Some bits of support we don't need there. I don't know if we need this one on the side of the ear here. Yeah, no, I don't think we need that at all. Or that. We'll definitely lose that one. Is that support blocker? No, it's custom support blocker. Those bits were actually probably going to cause us more trouble than they were going to save us. We'll need the nose. I don't reckon we need any of that support there. We need the ears, we can't avoid that. We'll probably actually hide a few bits of the supports on the moustache here as well, we'll see. Oh, you're kidding, it's crashed. Ah, you're joking. You prick, Kira. Alright, that's it. While we're at that, since that happened, edit, hollow. I'm going to do a version of him without the ears. $20mm gap between it. Update. So we're going to make a new shape to put inside him instead, because that was just a prick. Make a new shape without ears and without a nose, and then we can get it a bit closer to him. So we're only going 20mm gap. That should be pretty good. That's 2 centimeters all the way around of infill. Alright, I have to take a quick leak, guys. One sec. Okay, now let's just have a look at this. Separate shells. Okay, so that's our hollow. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Okay, that's our void. Actually, hang on. Just 1 second. We'll see how that goes. Now, I'm just going to set the per model settings for the void first.
Top and bottom, top layers, bottom layers. That's more than we needed, we don't need that. All line count, 0. Top layers, 0. Bottom layers, 0. Initial bottom layers, 0. Infill density. Okay, so now I should be able to go U and U, merge. And that should get them lined up perfectly within each other. Oh, do your bloody thing, you stupid bastard. Select face to align to the build plate, yes. That one. Why won't you do that? It doesn't normally do that, it's a bit weird. That should figure out flat. That's excellent, that seems to have worked. Now it's got to rotate him. What's it think it's doing now? Okay, well that seems to have worked. Probably still tilt him back a touch. But that is how it will sit on the table, so that's probably looking up a bit too much for sitting on the table. I think I'll get rid of that rock. I don't think I'll tilt it. I think I'll just sink it. Ah, that's right, because it needs to be rotated to fit in the bloody build plate. That'll help. One more click. Alrighty. Let's see if that made a difference. Come on, sub 800, sub 800. You can do it, otherwise I'm just going to order another roll of plastic. I really want to do it in the wood. I don't have another skin colour. I could do it in... I could do it in black and then paint it. Could do it in grey and paint it. Much prefer the effect that you get with the wood. 765, hell yeah. Now, so it's still kept my settings, that's good. That's what I like to see. See, if it's down a good chunk, it means there's a little bit of wriggle room for any mistakes. If you've got no wriggle room for mistakes, it's bad news. Beautiful, look at that. And this should have a nice even distance from those ears and features like that, so that's good.
gorgeous. Still at the 8% infill. That looks like plenty though. And I'll just quickly, yeah, we don't want that supporting these eyes. I'll just go in and get rid of that. Support blocker. Now I'm just going to save this project. Because this will save the model, the settings, and all of the changes that I've made to these bits. There's a fucking gap there. Yes, override. Do 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 do. Okay, hopefully it won't crash this time. Don't crash. Don't crash. I mean, I know this is all pretty boring and technical, but it's worth showing. Certainly saves a lot of material doing that void in the middle. I am freaky. Rah. Like John Howard eyebrows. Alright, so I don't think we've got too much unnecessary support there. There'll be a few bits of chunks to pick out from the beard, but pretty happy with the ears. They're supported well. Nothing unnecessary there. Just have a bit of a scroll down through these eyes and see how they will go. Click down through them layers to see if anything looks like it overhangs more than I reckon it can print, because the printer doesn't always know what's going on. It may have thought that there was a good reason for support and it might have been wrong, but it also might have been right. I think they're going to print fine, those little overhangs, provided that I have enough cooling. It's going to print any overhang that's more than 10 degrees at 10% of its speed. So when we look at speed instead of line type, we should expect to see those bits printing a bit slower. Yes, we do. See that? So all those bits in blue are going to print slower than the rest. So that's clever. Okay, 760 grams.
looks pretty good. Now obviously the top of the head's going to have a slight visible kind of area there that you can see the layer lines because of the way that the dome flattens out there. Just like any topographical map, you'll see that the flatter the land is, the further apart the lines are, and the steeper it is, the closer together they are. So all the sides are going to be nice and smooth. There'll be another little patch there on the bridge of the nose that will have slightly more obvious layers and a few little bits on the cheeks there, but they should be okay, I think. We should be able to sand most of those. That's the good thing about doing this effect that I'm doing with the ink. So I'm going to wash ink in all the crevices and everything, and then wipe it back with a rag while it's still wet, and get as clean as I can on all the highlights and surfaces, and then I'm going to sand it. Now what I can do is I can just completely avoid putting any ink on this area here whatsoever as I'm brushing it on, because it's only going to be to my detriment to do that. Then I have to sand out every single crevice. But if I never put any on there, then I'll be good. So I'm kind of slop it around all the eyes and moustache and everything, and all those kind of details like the nose and everything, and in the ears, and slop it all in there, then wipe it back as best I can, and then I can get into the sanding and basically sand off all the areas where I want it back to skin colour, and leave the shadows behind. Cool. Alright, well that's looking like it's ready to put on the 3D printer. Just double check a few little features such as build plate adhesion. Yeah, that looks like it's going to stick. I don't see any reason why it won't. Beautiful. The only potential problem is if those fall over. Those supports fall over before they get to the ears. I don't think they will. They've got a pretty wide little base. Okay, now we've got that how we want it, so I'm just going to save that project as Dave with Void. Got everything good how we want it. We're all happy. It's 11:11. Yep, just saved it then. Yeah, I could have took a little bit more off the back of the head. No, we got it down to where we needed to be, so I think we're good. Cool. Alright, now, here's the fun bit. We get to save it to the card, and hit go. There will be a seam. And the seam's going to go down here. It's going to be there'll be like a line. Will unfortunately be slightly visible. Where the hell does it go? Shit. Light disappears there. But there will be a seam, as you can see where that line was. And that's basically just where each line starts and stops. It has to start somewhere and stop somewhere. I'm just going to make sure that when it disappeared from where I could see it, that it didn't move to another spot. And I might move it to the back left-hand corner. If I go back left.
We'll just preview it for a sec. If you go back left, it'll actually be in the centre of your head instead of off to the side. Normally it's at the back because the model's normally facing forward, but we had to sort of turn you on a bit of an angle. Oh yeah, it's going to dot it along and move it there for some reason. Just going to move that to the back left corner. I'll try that. Because yeah, it's nice when the seam's right down the very back. Then I have to re-slice it, re-save it, put it on the card. That's looking more like it. So it's going to have that seam's going to go right down the back, more or less down the center of the back of your head. It could be tweaked to be slightly more in the center there, but I think that's fine. We're going to sand it anyway. So that will be basically a fine line where each time it draws a line, it's got to start somewhere and then it's got to stop somewhere. So that line is basically where it starts and stops. Alrighty, so we're going to save to the removable stick. That's what we're going to print. File saved. And we go save project. Yes, we want to overwrite that. And the job is saved. And then we're going to actually save this to that same folder of yours as well. In the Dave Fleming folder. The reason I saved that as Hector is because it's what printer I printed it on. That's the name of the printer. So no, so not tripping out. Who's Hector? Beautiful slice there. That is a good slice. 759 grams. That's what we want to see. And as you can see there's plenty of infill before it comes over and tries to close over the top of the head. So even though there's a bit of a void there in the middle, that by the time that actually prints above that void there's going to be tons of meat on top. Okay, guys. Well, I might as well wrap this stream up because I'm not actually going to stream the build. So I'm just going to wrap up the stream. Thanks for watching, and I hope that was useful for you guys.